Hey guys, Square with Camel. Finally got the forks buttoned up and installed on the T7. So far so good. Sag numbers look really good. Nothing left to do but go out and ride it. As far as the forks are concerned, we do need to do the shock. So the new shock from TFX showed up. It is a custom length unit because I wanted to stretch out the suspension travel on this bike without just making it taller. I got these guys to make me a custom length unit. So we're going to have 25 or 30 mil more up travel. As it sits right now, there's about 30 or 35 mil from the top of the tire to the bottom of the under fender. And so we'll be kind of in the same situation as the front forks. We'll be able to do 30 mil more up travel and then add 10 or 15 mil of droop. So the bike will only be 15 or 16 mil taller, so 5/8 of an inch, something like that. So this, that's not good. Like falling apart here. So why TFX? A lot of you may not have heard of TFX before. They're not big in North America, but they do have quite a following in Europe. The quality of the shock is amazing. The service is amazing. I had 3 different aftermarket shocks on my Africa Twin when I did the Triple S conversion on the forks. I went through 3 shocks, 3 different tuners, trying to get a shock sorted out that would work, and it was like blowing through fluid in 2 rides, just completely cooking the fluid, and the back end of the bike just wallowing around. I could not get a shock set up properly for that bike. And then I gave these guys a call. They made me a custom length shock for the Africa Twin, and it was like I bolted it in, didn't touch the clickers, didn't do anything. The sag was on the money. Went out for a ride and came back this huge smile on my face. I ran that shock for a year, and the quality, the ride quality on the bike was incredible. The combination of the forks and the TFX shock, it was the best riding adventure bike I've ever been on. And I've had, dialed in 1190, dialed in 990. My 790 is pretty spot on. It's pretty awesome. But the Africa Twin with the Triple S and the TFX was the best suspension I've ever ridden, period. There's like a dozen people that I had let ride the bike, and same thing, they got off and they were like, holy shit, dude, this is like, it's like riding on a cloud, and it's got awesome bottom resistance. So I wanted to do the same thing with the T7, and that's what we have done. Basically following the same path as I did with the Africa Twin. This might be my first ever unboxing video. I feel like my name's Karen and I'm a soccer mom. So, some decals, of course. Got the clamps for holding the reservoir on and the rubber bushings. Same thing for the reservoir. You can put it on a tube and then the clamps go around. It's the only downside with the shock. This one doesn't have a remote hydraulic preload adjuster, which is something that I would really like, but don't have it on this shock, unfortunately. I believe it is available on other models. It's just a combination of, it's just what I'm doing. We've got to, not able to do it. So that's the guy there. So I've already got the numbers written down, but I'm going to go ahead and do this, just go through the math with you on this, and hopefully everything pans out. Hopefully everything works the way that it's supposed to, and that my measurements and all my math are good. So this shock right now is 418 mil overall. That's overall. So this is TFX. X, and we'll go take the stock shock out of the bike. We'll do that measurement again. And this measurement here, so we've got 120 millimeters of travel. And the swing arm on the T7, unlike most bikes, are about 3-to-1. The T7 is 2-to-1. So our 120 mil equals 240 mil of wheel travel. So we're going to jump in here. I'm going to take the stock shock out. I'm going to put it on the bench, take measurements off of it so I can do some kind of preliminary planning. A lot of the planning's already done, obviously, because I ordered a shock to a specific length. So a lot of the math is done, but I'm going to go through what that math is. And then I'm going to hope that all of my guesses and all of my calculations work out. As you've seen on this project so far, there's been some snags along the way, and I fully expect a little bit of drama putting the shock in. We've got to cut the factory mount off and weld in a new one. So just making sure that the tire doesn't bottom out into the rear fender, and when it droops, the coil bucket doesn't hit the bottom of the pivot linkage are going to be the two main things. And we'll see how that all comes together. But yeah, first we got to yank that shock out. So pretty straightforward to get the shock out of this bike. All right, so our stock shock here is 370. And this is 100 mil travel. So the stock shock, 370 overall, 100 mil of travel on the shock itself, and that equals our 200 mil of wheel travel. So 370 and 418 mil, we need to deal with the difference, which is 48 mil in mounting, which is almost 2 inches. Just shy of 2 inches, which is where the drama kind of comes in. So the difference in the shock height, the 48 millimeters, like 2 inches, is a lot. So we need to have some of that as up travel and some of that as down travel. Otherwise, if we just try and bolt this shock in, it won't fit. There's not enough room between the pivot on the linkage and the mount at the top. We're going to run into all sorts of clearance issues. So it's going to be some back and forth messing around trying to get that sorted out. So the compressed length on this guy is 270 mil. The compressed length on this guy is 290. Is 298. So I've got to deal with 28 mil extra length at compression, or else the bike is going to be sky high. So we're going to cut the shock mount off of the frame and weld a new one on, and hoping all of the measurements work out. This has actually been long enough. I'm actually starting to second guess myself here, which sucks. But I've been literally started working on this in December, and now it is the end of April. So it's been almost 4 months since I originally sat down, did the math, checked the numbers over and over and over before I ordered the shock. So I should have the confidence that the numbers are good based on that. But it's been so long that I can't remember how I came up with all the numbers, and I'm hoping I'm hoping that everything pans out the way that it should. So I've got to tear a bunch of stuff off the back of the bike to get to the upper shock mount because I got to cut it off and weld it. The Airbox is right over top of the shock mount, so I can move that up about an inch, I believe. I think it was about 20 mil was the math that I had, so that I can move it up. And I just need to, yeah, go through these numbers again so they're fresh in my mind. So I'm going to pull some bits off the bike here just to make it easier to work on, just a little more visibility. And it is quite possible that I'm going to have to strip most of the body panels off the bike. May even have to take the tank and the fairings off because I need to get the Airbox out, I believe, to get that all sorted out. That's a 140. So at 370 mil, which is the stock shock fully extended, we have 230 mil clearance between the top of the tire and the fender well. So we've got 200 mil travel. So right now there's 23 mil of clearance between the tire and that. So we're going to shrink that a little bit, and then we're going to have to take the balance in larger ride height. Tires get a little bit bigger due to centrifugal force when they're spinning fast, so it'll balloon out a little bit. So we're going to be running it really close, is what it is. As most of you know, this bike's got to get crushed in towards the end of the summer anyway. So I'll set it up, and if it doesn't work, then when I get my Canadian spec bike and swap all the parts over, then I'll make adjustments to that bike at that time. So this is the upper shock mount here, and you can see we've got a reasonable amount of room between that and the Airbox. So from the top edge, center of the bolt to the bottom of the Airbox, we've got 50 mil. And then of course I need to take into account the housing on the shock, and we don't want the shock butted right up against the bottom of the Airbox and bouncing. So center line here, I'm going to say can probably get 35 mil out of that. So if we leave 20 mil clearance between the bottom of the Airbox and the center line of the bolt, that will be just enough to clear the shock, which is going to be, so we're going to be able to move that mount up by an inch, 25 mil. I got the Airbox out. I'm going to start cutting the factory shock mount out. All right, that was a lot of messing around. So I've got the old shock mount out. There's all kinds of stuff in here that I was worried about catching with the grinder or the plasma cutter, and the only thing, I nicked the brake line here, just zinged it. It's not leaking, it's not very deep, it's just surface, but everything else came out unscathed. So got that all cleaned up. Managed to do this without gouging the shit out of this. Normally, kind of grinding, cleaning up in a tight area like this, the odds of zinging into a tube with the plasma cutter or the grinding disc is huge. Didn't melt any wires. Everything looks pretty good. All right, so it's like way late, and I'm going to call it. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, so I'm going to wrap this up and go in and start doing some video editing. And yeah, so the next few days I'll start doing the test fit on the shock and probably do some welding on the spring perches. I can't just tack them in, they're gonna have to be a little bit stronger than that. And then I'll pull the shock, or the spring, sorry, off the shock. And then I'll try and compress the rear suspension fully. So I gotta check for clearance with the suspension linkage. I gotta check clearance on the back tire into the rear fender well, and clearance of the new upper shock mount at the Airbox. So we may have to do some modifications on some or all. Definitely some, I'm just not sure which parts. It's all, everything is like, we're running things pretty tight to make this happen. So anyway, thanks for watching. Yeah, next few days I'll try and get another video up and we should be a little farther along.